What was supposed to be a night of celebration turned into disaster after 4 friends who were all drunk left the bar in the city without a designated driver. Designate a driver. Don't drink and drive.
This is your news source evening bulletin for today, Friday, the 17th day of January in the year 2025. I'm Gordon Mosley reporting, and here's what we're tracking tonight. In a budget presentation that went on for more than 4 hours, Minister responsible for Finance, Dr. Ashley Singh, unveiled a massive $1.382 trillion national budget, which is 20.6% larger than last year's budget. He said the budget will be fully financed with no new taxes, but with a heavy dependence on funds from the oil sector. The budget will see hundreds of billions of dollars being injected into the education, health, public infrastructure, and other key sectors. With regards to the measures with effect from the 1st of January 2025, the income tax threshold will be increased from $100,000 to $130,000, the finance minister announced. He said that move to further raise the income tax threshold will put an additional $8.5 billion into the pockets of Guyanese workers.
I now wish, Mr. Speaker, to announce that with effect year of income 2025, this year, the income tax threshold will be increased to $130,000 monthly. Mr. Speaker, it might escape the notice of our colleagues on that side of the House, but what this constitutes us in one term in office, doubling the income tax threshold from $65,000 a month to $130,000 a month. Mr. Speaker, this will result in an additional $8.5 billion of disposable income for workers and the removal of 22,000 persons from the tax net.
Additionally, the government has also taken a decision to reduce the personal income tax rate of 28% to 25% for employed and self-employed workers. Minister Singh said this measure will increase the disposable income of more than 100,000 of taxpayers and is estimated to put about $3.6 billion back into the hands of Guyanese workers. The finance minister also announced a one-off cash grant of $100,000 for newborn babies.
Mr. Speaker, in order to support the development and well-being of one of our most precious and valuable population groups, newborn babies, who will constitute the future of Guyana, our government will provide a one-off grant of $100,000 for every newborn baby born in Guyana to a Guyanese mother, starting from 2025.
2025 will also see the old age pension being increased to $41,000, public assistance to $22,000, and the Because We Care cash grant to $50,000. The finance minister said the move to increase the old age pension will benefit more than 76,000 pensioners. In the case of the Because We Care cash grant, Minister Singh told the Assembly that over 205,000 school children stand to benefit.
Mr. Speaker, in keeping with our manifesto promise, I now wish to announce on behalf of this People's Progressive Party civic government a further increase of the Because We Care cash grant to $50,000. Benefiting over 205,000 1,000 children across public and private schools, recalling that we extended to the parents of children going to public schools, and placing in the hands of these parents an additional $2 billion to be spent on their children. Mr. Speaker, together with the Because We Care cash grant, together the Because We Care cash grant and the uniform voucher allowance will result in parents of these 205,000 school children each receiving $55,000 per child.
Other measures include the continued distribution of the $100,000 cash grant, free university education, the reduction of electricity costs by 50% when the gas to energy project comes on stream, the abolition of bridge tolls when a new Demerara Bridge is completed, the containing of the cost of fuel, the reduction in freight charges, the continuation of the part-time job program, the issuance of a $10,000 universal healthcare voucher, the adjustments of taxes for children, the removal of VAT on agriculture machinery, and the removal of VAT on backup generators. The finance minister said the government will also continue steps that are geared towards easing the cost of living woes. More on the national budget when we return.
It all starts with one. Maybe it's one look, you know the one, or one touch, even one word. It can start with one step, or one promise, one thrill, one first time, one deep breath, one leap of faith, one day to remember, or one night to forget. One moment, so many stories that make up one crazy, average, everyday, fabulous life. We get one life, just one. Make your move. It all starts with one.
Your own home is so much more than just four walls, floors, and ceilings. It's a lifetime of great memories and stories. Come talk to us and start your journey home today.
Republic Bank, we're the one for you.
Honey, what are you doing? Let's cash out. Let's cash out.
Shop $5,000 or more at any Massey stores for a chance to win a 2024 Nissan Qashqai Sense and $100,000 every 2 weeks with Massey Stores Christmas Jackpot Promotion.
Guyana, get ready for a special night of 70s soul featuring the Stylistics.
God bless you. You make me feel brand new.
And Blue Magic.
So let the sideshow begin. Hurry, hurry, step right on in.
Valentine's Day, February 14th. Save the date. The Stylistics. And Blue Magic, it's classic 70s soul, coming to Guyana Friday, February 14th, 2025. Don't miss it.
Make the world go round.
During his national budget presentation this afternoon, Minister responsible for finance, Dr. Ashni Singh, painted a bright picture of the country's economic performance and prospects, boasting of Guyana's economy recording a growth of 43.6% last year, with the non-oil economy growing by 13.1%. In the budget presentation, the finance minister noted that while Guyana continues to cushion the shocks from global issues, the country's economy has been performing relatively well.
Growth in the overall economy reflects continued strong expansion in oil output, while growth in the non-oil economy is driven primarily by increases in rice, other crops, and bauxite production, along with expansion in other mining and quarrying, as well as in the construction and services sectors.
Dr. Singh said economic growth highlights Guyana's emergence as a key player in the global market. The Minister of Finance announced that the agriculture, fisheries, and forestry sectors grew by 11% last year. That performance was mainly attributed to the performance in the rice sector, the other crop sector, and livestock. The sugar subsector saw a decline in production by 21.8% last year, marking one of the highest contractions in the sector, with the Guyana Sugar Corporation GuySuCo producing 47,103 tons of sugar. But the poor performance in sugar, Dr. Singh said, was due to weather patterns such as El Nino and was compounded by labor shortages across the industry throughout the past year. The rice industry grew by 9.3% last year, while the other crop subsector also recorded growth of 10.9%. Last year, too, the forestry subsector increased by 4.6%, while the livestock industry expanded by 24.6%, and the fishing industry grew by 1%. Further, the finance minister noted that the mining and quarrying sectors expanded by 55.9%, while the oil and gas sector grew by 57.7%. The bauxite sector saw growth by 48.4%, while the other mining subsectors comprising of sand, stone, diamonds, and manganese grew by 50.5%.
Mr. Speaker, despite facing tremendous challenges in the first half of 2024, the gold mining industry turned around to record a growth of 0.5% last year. Total gold declarations amounted to 434,067 ounces in 2024. Declarations from the single largest operator at Aurora grew by 32.2% to 144,593 ounces, and the Guyana Gold Board's purchases grew by 53.7% to 134,230 ounces, offsetting the decline in declarations from licensed dealerships.
The minister responsible for finance to the country's services sector saw a growth rate of 18.5%, while the manufacturing sector saw an increase in performance by 1.8%. Meanwhile, the real estate and mortgages sector increased by 20.3%, while other lending to households saw an increase of 20.5%. The Guyana Sugar Corporation, GuySuCo, will be given yet another shot in the arm as part of the government's recovery efforts for the sugar industry, with another $13.3 billion budgeted for the industry this year, as part of the allocation for agriculture, the Finance Minister Dr. Ashley Singh announced today. During his budget presentation, the minister said the additional injection is part of the government's continued efforts to revitalize the sugar industry. The allocation is more than double last year's allocation of $6 billion, and Minister Singh said it will support GuySuCo's field and factory operation, among other issues.
In 2025, that work will continue. An additional 3,000 hectares of land will be converted to further support mechanization. Key investments will be made to acquire additional field equipment, rehabilitate field infrastructure, and construct over 17 kilometers of all-weather roads across the industry. To this end, sir, $13.3 billion is budgeted to continue to support and rehabilitate the sugar industry.
In addition to the $6 billion last year, the cash-strapped Sugar Corporation, which has been operating at a loss for the last decade or so, received more than $9 billion in supplementary funding, which supported the acquisition of land, additional employees for field and factory, among other operations. The total support for the industry last year exceeded $15 billion. Although the government was able to reopen the Rose Hall estate, which recommenced operations in 2023, the finance minister earlier in his presentation announced that just over 47 tons of sugar was produced last year, the worst performance ever by the company. He blamed that on weather and manpower shortages. Minister Singh also said the continued investments in the sugar industry will be undertaken with the ultimate objective of ensuring that each estate is able to be back up and running in the future. He said billions have already been expended to the fields and factories to have them working again. In the oil and gas sector, Guyana received $2.6 billion in oil revenue and royalties last year. The senior minister with responsibility for finance, Dr. Ashley Singh, disclosed today during his budget presentation. The funds were injected into the National Resource Fund, he told the Assembly.
Deposits into the NRF in 2024 amounted to $2.6 billion. The fund received $2.2 billion in profit oil and $557.5 million from Destiny. Of the $2.2 billion, $557.5 million related to Destiny, 869.2 to Unity, and 796.3 to Prosperity.
Minister Singh explained that in 2024 there were 225 lifts of crude oil from Guyana's 3 floating production and storage and offloading vessels, Liza Destiny, Liza Unity, and Prosperity in the Stabroek Block.
The profit oil payments received in 2024 correspond to 2 lifts that occurred in the final quarter of 2023 and 26 that occurred in 2024. And it is anticipated that payments for 2 of the lifts that occurred in December 2024 will be received in January 2025.
Additionally, the government received $348 million in royalties from the Stabroek Block operator in 2024. The minister noted that in keeping with the amount approved by the parliament last year, just under $1.6 billion was withdrawn from the Natural Resource Fund to finance development projects. At the end of 2024, the NRF had a balance of $3.1 billion. The chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission, retired Justice Claudette Singh, has ruled against the introduction of biometrics for this year's elections. In her ruling at the commission, which was made on Thursday, Justice Singh noted that with less than a year to go before elections, and given the number of tasks that would need to be done before such a system can be properly introduced, and all of the work already required to prepare for the elections, she is convinced that the introduction of biometrics is not feasible within the time presently available. Justice Singh explained that in relation to the registration process, the fingerprints of applicants are currently taken manually. But the National Registration Act empowers the Commission to determine from time to time procedures for the acquisition and electronic processing of data. She said it is obvious, therefore, that in this regard there is nothing in the law or otherwise preventing the introduction of a system where such fingerprints are taken digitally, since it is the Commission that is empowered to determine such procedures. However, Justice Singh noted that apart from the necessary elements of implementing such a system, such as the procurement of equipment, training of personnel, and education of the public, there is still a need for the Commission to address other issues, such as ensuring that there is adequate legislation pertaining to the security of prints. In relation to biometric identification at the place of poll, Justice Singh said there is legal provision for fingerprints of voters to be compared with that on their identity paper, which equates to the national identification card. However, she said that only ID cards are issued to persons who could sign, carry the fingerprint of the registrant. Justice Singh said introducing a system of biometric identification of voters digitally as a mandatory or only means of identification would impose an additional requirement for voters and would therefore be unconstitutional. She said it may, however, be used as an additional mechanism to aid in the identification of electors, where if a person who is eligible to vote cannot be identified using the digital fingerprint, the other methods can still be used to identify him and allow him to vote. She said it is her opinion that GCOM could introduce it in that way as another tool to identify persons. However, legislation will be necessary. In relation to whether GCOM could introduce the digital collection of fingerprints and biometric fingerprint identification of voters in time for this year's elections, Justice Singh said the Commission would still have to do major things, such as the hosting of stakeholder consultations to determine whether GCOM should introduce biometrics now, consulting with stakeholders like the government and parliament to determine whether it is even possible to do so now, considering things like costs and any legislative amendments necessary. She said the Commission would also have to examine the procurement of equipment for the introduction of biometrics in the registration process and at the place of poll, and the training of staff on the use of such equipment. The GCOM chair said there would also have to be public education on the introduction of the systems and how they are to be used to aid in registration and voting. With the list of concerns, the chairman of the Elections Commission said the introduction of biometrics for registration and at the place of poll would not be feasible at this time. The opposition and its nominated members on the commission have been pushing for the introduction of biometrics for the upcoming elections. They have been making the case for the introduction for more than 3 years. The government-nominated members of the commission and the government have been against the introduction of biometrics at this time.
Guyana, get ready for a special night of 70s soul featuring the Stylistics.
God bless you. You make me feel brand new.
And Blue Magic.
So let the sunshine begin. Hurry, hurry, step right on in.
Valentine's Day, February 14th. Save the date. The Stylistics. And Blue Magic, it's classic 70s soul. Coming to Guyana Friday, February 14th, 2025. Don't miss it.
Make the world go round.
Your own home is so much more than just four walls, floors, and ceilings. It's a lifetime of great memories and stories. Come talk to us and start your journey home today.
Republic Bank, we're the one for you.
Monster, bust the flavors. We're full of flavors. Bust the flavors, that me crave for. We're full of flavors. Tell your neighbors about the bust the flavors. Grab a bust the flavors. Yeah, thirst buster, grab a buster. Bust the flavor, taste the savor. Buster, bust the flavors. Buster, bust the flavors.
With the opposition pressing for the release of the 2022 National Census report, Vice President Bharat Jagdeo on Thursday said he had no information on the possible release date of the census. In October of last year, the Bureau of Statistics said a preliminary report on the census would be released soon. However, there has been no release almost 3 months later. Confronted on the issue yesterday, Vice President Jagdeo pointed to the senior minister with responsibility for finance, Dr. Ashley Singh, who he said would be the one to receive the report on behalf of the government.
I have not dealt with this. I saw it recently. I don't know. It would be with the Minister of Finance. I don't have any information on that issue at this stage.
Mr. Jagdeo said the opposition has been pushing for the release of the census for political purposes, on the assumption that it would show a decline in key populations.
Since I started politics, they have always done the ethnic count. Indo-Guyanese population has been declining in Guyana. So the PPP will lose the elections. Indo-Guyanese population has been declining, so the PPP would lose the elections. Not today. From the beginning that I started politics in. And for them, it's just about race. But we've shown over the years that we've won the elections. We won the elections in spite of a declining Indo-Guyanese population.
He also said regardless of the results of the census, his party, the PPP Civic, is confident that it will be re-elected based on its national politics.
It does not matter. We're going to win the elections because of our national politics. And they know it in, I don't know in there, this is like consoling themselves.
But leader of the Alliance for Change, Nigel Hughes, said it is unacceptable that more than 2 years later, the census report has not been released. He said based on internal analysis done by his party, the AFC, the 2022 population and housing census report will provide some interesting results.
The census is still not being released. We published earlier this week the results of earlier censuses and the decline and increases that they showed, and our extrapolation from that information based on the rates of growth does disclose some very interesting results that we anticipate. And so we want to repeat again our demand for the release of the census, which is now 2.5 years old.
In justifying the delay in the publication of the census results, the Bureau of Statistics said the delay is strictly as a result of its unwavering commitment to professional diligence in the face of considerable challenges encountered during the census round. In a meeting with the Private Sector Commission on Thursday, the Alliance for Change said it presented its vision for Guyana as it seeks to expand its support base ahead of the upcoming general elections. The meeting with the Private Sector Commission took place at the PSC's office.
The AFC, of course, presented its vision for the country over the next 10 to 15 years and the critical areas for discussion.
The AFC leaders said issues discussed range from national development and the need for a national development plan that is all-inclusive to the conduct of elections and the importance of safeguarding Guyana's sovereignty and territorial integrity. According to the AFC leader, the PSC had a keen interest in the upcoming elections and the ability of the Elections Commission to conduct free and fair elections.
The Private Sector Commission expressed confidence in the GCOM, and we expressed the exact opposite, a complete lack of confidence. We identified the several areas which have caused us to not have confidence or lose confidence in GCOM and its chairmanship. We provided the reasons why we arrived at those conclusions.
Mr. Hughes said the Alliance for Change spoke of the need for biometric identification of voters at the place of poll to guarantee fair elections. The Alliance for Change is expected to meet with the Elections Commission and its chairman, retired Justice Lola Singh. A date for that meeting has not yet been set. Mr. Hughes said once that meeting takes place, the AFC and the PSC are likely to meet again to discuss electoral matters. Let's tell you now that charges of fraud and conspiracy against former Public Works Minister David Patterson in relation to a feasibility study for the new Demerara River Bridge were dismissed this morning by the Magistrates Court. Patterson and the former general manager of the Demerara Harbour Bridge, Ralston Adams, were charged for defrauding the Demerara Harbour Bridge Company in relation to a contract that was awarded to a Dutch company to conduct a feasibility study and design for the new Demerara River Bridge. The charge, which was filed by the Special Organized Crime Unit, alleged that between November 18 of 2016 and the 1st of February 2018, Mr. Patterson and Mr. Adams conspired with each other and with other persons unknown to defraud the Harbour Bridge Company of $162.6 million, which were funds of the asphalt plant account for the bridge and money that was used for the feasibility study. Magistrate Lerone Daly found that there was insufficient evidence in the case. Following this morning's decision of the court, Mr. Patterson told News Source that the charges were politically motivated. He said the very feasibility study that the government said was corrupt and charged him for was used for the new Demerara River Bridge, which is currently under construction, and also used by the Environmental Protection Agency.
They made, of course, the former Chief Justice, now Chairman of the GCO, when she was the Police Legal Authority, had ruled that is no case, but of course the government politically vindictive carried it to case, and then so this morning, after 4 years exactly, 4 days short, because on 21st of January 2021, case was brought up. The magistrate, Leon, senior magistrate, dismissed the charges. She found that there's no agreement to defraud. They were unable to provide any evidence, and nor were they able to provide any evidence that that the state was deprived or anybody was deprived of money since the study was completed.
Patterson said he is prepared to further defend himself should the government move to appeal. But in the first instance, he said the case should not have gone on for so long. He explained that the Director of Public Prosecutions had previously withdrew a charge against another former minister when it was found that he was charged on a matter that was a decision of the cabinet. Patterson explained that the matter was also a cabinet decision, and when he wrote to the DPP for the charges to be dropped since the precedents had already been set, there were interventions by the government to have the case prolonged in the court. The Occupational Health and Safety Department of the Ministry of Labour has launched an investigation into yet another workplace death. The latest incident took place on Thursday at the Johns Finance Limited Wharf on Water Street here in Georgetown. 63-year-old stevedore Dallas Sharples lost his life in the incident. Sharples was employed at a John Finance company. According to initial reports, Mr. Sharples was assisting in the offloading of containers from a vessel along with his co-workers when he was hit by a section of the crane that was being used to move the containers. He was pitched into the bottom of the vessel and emergency services were contacted. The man was rushed to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. The Labour Ministry said Senior Occupational Safety and Health Officer Garway Bourne and Occupational Safety and Health Officer Ray Hosanna visited the site to begin the investigation to determine the circumstances surrounding the accident and to develop recommendations to prevent a similar occurrence in the future. Meanwhile, Minister of Labour Joe Hamilton in a statement reminded employers and workers of the importance and need for good safety and health practices in the workplace. Investigations into the fatal accident are ongoing. Guyana recorded a 60% increase in workplace deaths in 2024.
Guyana's economy is rapidly transforming, and we're all part of it. GuyOil is at the forefront of this development by providing reliable and efficient energy and supporting community development from the very core. 100% of GuyOil's profit goes back to building schools, roads, and other important infrastructure that connects our cities and towns, providing fuel to domestic, marine, industrial, and aerial transportation. GuyOil has now repositioned itself as a market leader in the petroleum industry, building a better future for all of us.
What was supposed to be a night of celebration turned into disaster after 4 friends who were all drunk left the bar in the city without a designated driver. Designate a driver. Don't drink and drive.
It all starts with one. Maybe it's one look. You know the one. Or one touch. Even one word. It can start with one step. Or one promise. One thrill. One first time. One deep breath. One leap of faith. One day to remember. Or one night to forget. One moment. So many stories that make up one crazy, average, everyday, fabulous life. We get one life. Just one. Make your move. It all starts with one.
With your regional and international news tonight, I am Svetlana Marshall in the region. Former President Jair Bolsonaro's defense filed a request late on Thursday with Brazil's highest court to urgently reconsider the decision to bar him from traveling to the United States to attend the U.S. inauguration of President-elect Donald Trump. According to Reuters, Bolsonaro's defense claimed that he has fully complied with and respected the precautionary measures imposed on him by the Supreme Court, and also rejected any possibility of him fleeing. Earlier on Thursday, the Supreme Court rejected the former president's request to have his passport returned, a decision seen by Reuters showed. Bolsonaro, who has been barred from running for office until 2030 and faces criminal charges for allegedly plotting a coup after his 2022 election defeat, had his passport retained in February 2024 on the order of Brazil's top court. Right-wing Bolsonaro, who governed from 2019 to 2022 and has been called Trump of the tropics, said last week on X that he had been invited to Trump's inauguration and was seeking to obtain the return of his passport. Colombian President Gustavo Petro suspended peace talks with the National Liberation Army ELN on Friday after accusing the group of committing a war crime in the Catatumbo region, according to Reuters. Petro said on X that the dialogue process with the group was suspended and that the ELN has no will for peace. On Thursday, ELN fighters killed at least 5 demobilized members who were part of a former rebel group that were also part of a 2016 peace agreement. The group also launched attacks against members of the Estado Mayor Central, EMC. The violence led to civilian displacement and condemnation from the United Nations. Peace talks between ELN and the government, which restarted in 2022, have been marred by setback. In September, the government suspended negotiations a day after an ELN explosive attack killed 2 soldiers and wounded 29 near the Venezuelan border. And finally tonight, international news. The Supreme Court upheld on Friday a law banning TikTok in the United States on national security grounds if its Chinese parent company ByteDance does not sell the short video app by Sunday, as the justices in a 9-0 decision declined to rescue a platform used by about half of all Americans. The justices ruled that the law, passed by an overwhelming bipartisan majority in Congress last year and signed by Democratic President Joe Biden, did not violate the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment protection against government abridgment of free speech. The justices affirmed a lower court's decision that had upheld the measure after it was challenged by TikTok, ByteDance, and some of the app's users. And that's your News Source Evening Bulletin for tonight. I'm Svetlana Marshall wishing you a pleasant weekend.